Hey, it's your favorite local realtor, Eren Millam with Premier Property Group. And today we're going to be reacting to a video that says, don't buy a house. We'll see if they're actually backing up their information with factual information or if it's just hearsay and scare tactics. And maybe we'll find out if they're selling something at the end. So without further ado, let's get into it.
The U.S. housing market is in the middle of its sixth major downturn since the late 1960s. Home prices are declining in 75% of major cities, with many areas posting declines for 6 or 7 consecutive months. The most time-tested and reliable measure of home prices is the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. The Case-Shiller Home Price Index tells us that home prices at the national level have started to decline, with a peak in the summer of 2022. Home prices don't normally decline in nominal terms. This chart shows that in the last 30 years, home prices have only declined 3 times. There was a 2% decline in the 1990 recession and nearly a 30% decline around the 2008 recession. Home prices didn't drop at all in the 2001 recession. Home prices today have declined about 3% nationally from the peak in the summer of 2022. But as we know, real estate is regional. Some areas
So yeah, I just want to stop the video right there. What he's saying is true. Typically, recessions don't affect necessarily real estate. There's been a couple times where the recessions have affected real estate, and usually those are ones where you have, high inventory, and there's other factors. The recession last time was caused by real estate, so that's kind of a big deal there. But typically, if you're going to have a recession, it may or may not affect the housing market. And usually if it does, it's not that much. So something to keep in mind is recessions are not the same as a housing price decline.
have declined more than 3%, and some areas are still closer to their peak levels. In addition to the magnitude or depth of the home price decline, another way to measure the correction is based on time, or how long has the correction lasted. After the 1990 recession, even though home prices only fell by about 2%, it took 37 months for home prices to make a new peak. The 2000 recession didn't see any decline in home prices, but the 2008 recession saw home prices crash 30%, and it took 116 months to reach a new peak. Today, home prices peaked about 8 months ago, but this data is slightly delayed, so the real number is closer to 10 or 11 months, but the declines are still mild on a national average in terms of the magnitude. In the 1990 recession, even though home prices only declined about 2% on average, the declines lasted for 37 months and impacted 74% of cities. The 2008 recession was very large in terms of magnitude, falling 30%. It was very long in terms of duration.
Real quick, in Lewis County, I think the graph showed 26% nationally. In Lewis County, it was 27%, so that's pretty close.
Taking 116 months to make a new peak, and it impacted 100% of cities. We are clearly in the middle of another home price downturn since the declines have been about 3% from the peak, the duration has lasted 10 or 11 months, and 75% of cities are showing declining home price growth. This chart shows the depth and duration of the home price downturn in the 20 major cities across the country. The left axis measures the percentage decline from the peak, and the bottom axis measures the duration of the home price declines. The upper left shows the areas that have been least affected, and the bottom right shows where the housing downturn is hitting the hardest.
This is a really good point. Real estate is local. Someone made that catchphrase. So, for example, a lot of things that affect the national market aren't necessarily affecting Lewis County as a whole. And I know in places like Austin, they have a ton of inventory, so their prices are dropping quite a bit. In Lewis County, we still have really low inventory. It spiked last year, and then we saw the prices come down, and then now the inventory has not come back from there. It just kept going down. So as far as that goes, I'm expecting prices to stabilize and go up again.
Cleveland, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, and Charlotte have seen virtually no correction at all, with home prices within 1 or 2% from their peak levels and no consistent declines. On the other extreme, San Francisco and Seattle have seen price declines of almost 15% in less than a year. This is on par with 2008 type declines. In the middle, we see cities like Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Portland, where there has been a clear shift and home prices have fallen about 6 to 10%. So there is no doubt that based on depth, duration, and dispersion, that the US nationally is in a home price downturn. Depending on the location, the downturn is anywhere from non-existent to severe, with the national average so far in a moderate correction. But how does this housing downturn compare to a longer history?
This is a really good point. I mean, on one hand, someone could say the housing market is collapsing, and on another hand, someone could say the housing market is going up. And really, it just depends where are you from? What are you talking about? Now, if we're in Lewis County, to say that the market is crashing or collapsing, that would be false. Prices are actually going up. So at least for our area, we're not in a big city like Seattle. We don't have a lot of inventory. And so what you're hearing in all the headlines and you're trying to base your decisions off of from the headlines, it's inaccurate. You have to pay attention to what's going on locally.
If we want to compare housing cycles across a longer period of time, we have to look at home prices in real terms or adjusted for inflation. There are a few reasons why looking at real or inflation-adjusted home prices is appropriate. Housing is very important for the wealth effect. When home prices rise, people feel wealthier, and it is very common to refinance and pull equity out of a property to use on consumption or more real estate assets. This only works if the home price is rising in real terms, or else the cash that you pull out of the home can't support the consumption of other goods that are rising even faster in price. During periods of high inflation like the 1970s, home prices may rise in nominal terms but fall sharply in real terms. When we look at real home prices, we can see that prices generally decline around recessions.
Something I noticed just real quick, when you're looking at the graph, okay, the line is, it's really low and then it goes up really high and then goes down and then goes up a little bit higher. So basically the difference between when it was lower prior to 2000 and like 2008, that's the difference between 2008 and now. And this graph is nowhere near showing that. So it's looking like it's not that much higher, but the decline is like straight down near at the end of the graph there. So it's a little bit skewed just from my vantage point. It makes you feel like the market's not twice as good as it was then. And then also that we're going to have a big crash exactly like that, only on a higher magnitude. So we'll see where he finishes up, but this graph is a little misleading.
This makes sense. The duration of the correction and the magnitude of the corrections vary, but they are generally centered around recessionary periods. Real home prices were more stable in the 4 decades from 1960 through 2000 before taking on what can only be described as boom-bust type growth, rising 75% from 1997 through 2006 and rising 78% from 2012 through 2022.
So that is not at all accurate. It's raised about 400%, at least in Lewis County. Maybe this is nationally, but that's what I was talking about with the graph, because in the middle of 2013, the average price was 137, and now your average price is 425. And last summer in June, when we hit the peak, it was like 465. So the market literally is 4 times greater than it was at the depths of the last recession, and is about twice as good at the peak of the last peak. So
home prices peaked on a national level in May 2022. This peak is earlier for some cities like San Francisco and later for places like Miami, but in real terms, home prices have peaked everywhere. And at this point, we're only going to refer to the national average. The US housing market has had 6 major downturns since the 1960s. Real home prices declined around all the recession periods except 2001 and the COVID recession. Real home prices have declined about 6% since May of 2022. In terms of duration, during past housing downturns, real home prices declined for 33 to 70 months, with the exception of 2000, which saw no declines at all, not even in real terms. The other important point is that home prices tend to bottom at the end of the recession or after the recession. Home prices are a slow-moving, lagging indicator, with a full housing cycle often taking 3 to 5 years. So in the 6 major housing downturns, including the extreme 2008 scenario and the no decline 2000 scenario, the average recession brings a real home price decline of roughly 12%, with declines that last for 37 months. Currently, home prices have declined for 6 consecutive months and are about 6% from the peak in real terms, but
All right, so here he is talking about national averages. In Lewis County, we dropped from June of 2022 through, we had a weird month where it went up, through about December. So 6 months of dropping, and from that time we've been inching upward. So we lost about 10% from June to December, and then we've gained about 5% since then. So we're actually going up in Lewis County.
the economic downturn and most of the recession are still in front of us, so declines will likely continue and reach at least the historical averages. Leading indicators of real home price growth are still moving to the downside, something we cover in our quarterly real estate deep dive reports. So in summary, the US housing market is in the middle of an ongoing downturn, with prices declining in 75% of cities. The declines are not evenly distributed. Some cities are showing substantial declines before any significant crack in the labor market, which is concerning, but some cities have only seen the momentum slow down, without any sizable reductions in price yet. Where the housing market bottoms in relation to past economic downturns remains an open question, but there is no debate that the market hit a clear peak in 2022, and the broad national momentum remains to the downside.
Okay, so that wasn't entirely bad. He's talking national numbers, which obviously don't really apply to our local numbers. So again, it's important to make sure that you're being educated on a local level, because if you're just looking at national headlines, or if you're looking at big city headlines like Seattle, they're doing something totally different than what we're doing here in Lewis County and the surrounding areas. So just keep that in mind. As far as this video goes, I think they did a fair job. I think the "Don't Buy a House" title is probably a little clickbaity, but as far as the information, they're not actually telling you not to buy a house. They're just giving you information, and it does not appear that they were trying to sell you anything, except I don't know if those reports cost money or not, but yeah. So overall, I thought it was pretty good. It's giving you a different look at the national scene, which is important to keep in mind. But a lot of these predictions are incredibly dire, and it just does not fit our area because we have low inventory, and that is what is keeping prices up. Now, if you have interest rates go way up and quickly, then maybe you'll have a downturn because buyers are looking to not buy anymore. However, if that interest rate stabilizes, people can get used to it. We already see brand new loan programs coming out, like a 3-2-1 buy down, 2-1 buy down, all sorts of these things that are allowing buyers the opportunity to purchase even in a higher interest rate market, which historically 6% is not a high number of interest rate. So if the interest rate stays the same or goes down, I mean, it's just going to open floodgates because there just is no inventory and there's still a ton of buyers. One of my most recent listings, we had 12 showings in 2 days. We had 5 offers. I had more people who wanted to see the house, but we shut it all down. We took those 5 offers and picked one. It was getting too overwhelming for the sellers. So yeah, most homes right now are getting 2 to 4 showings. So you definitely want to make sure your agent knows what the market's doing. That way, when they set up their marketing, if they market at all, that they know what numbers to hit and what to expect. And if something's not working, to fix it. I think that's one of the probably the biggest complaints of real estate in the industry is people don't know what their agent is doing, or they don't think their agent is doing anything. And to be honest with you, being on both sides of the equation, there are a lot of agents who don't do anything. And so stay away from them. Find someone who does something and can back it up with stats. This guy. All right, I'm gonna stop it there. If this video was helpful to you, consider giving it a like and consider subscribing so you don't miss any need-to-know information about our Lewis County real estate market, and share it with someone who may find it useful and helpful. Again, I'm Eren Millam with Premier Property Group, LLC, and remember, never settle for less than extraordinary.